You are listening to a Pet Radio Show podcast on PetRadioShow.com.
Joining us today is Carol Novello, author of Mutual Rescue, How Adopting a Homeless Animal Can Save You Too, and was recently featured on Hallmark. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's a delight to be here.
Now, Mutual Rescue is more than just a book. Tell us more about this initiative that you founded, what it is, and what you folks do.
Absolutely. Well, Mutual Rescue came about because as I got involved with animal welfare, people would sometimes say to me, why are you helping animals when you could be helping people? And I thought that was a very curious comment, and what I really wanted to do was help change the conversation from people or animals to people and animals. And so the Mutual Rescue Initiative is really about using authentic storytelling to change people's hearts and minds. So it started out with us creating short films that illustrated the impacts of animals when they're adopted and how they change human lives. And our very first film, Eric and Petey, ended up being viewed more than 100 million times across various social media platforms around the globe.
Wow.
And that, pretty amazing. And then we went on, we've released a total of 12 films in total now that have collectively been viewed 153 million times. And that led to me writing the Mutual Rescue book, which came out in April. And we also have a program called Doggy Day Out, which is about getting folks involved at the local level with their shelters and rescue groups in their area where they can take shelter animals out for an afternoon. So it's really about driving awareness at the national level to elevate animal welfare and then drive engagement at the local level.
Wow. Well, if you can, tell us some of the stories from the book and the impact that they've had.
Sure. Well, it's amazing because we look at animals and their role in our lives, and they really touch so many different aspects. So the book is divided into 4 sections: heart, body, mind, and connection. And in each of those sections, it delves further. Each chapter focuses on things, for example, like in the heart section, we talk about courage and trust and resilience. And in the body section, we talk about overcoming injury and addiction. And in the mind section, we talk about grit and emotional well-being. And in connection, we talk about relationships. And so there are stories.
If I can stop you for a minute, in each of these sections, is this sort of are there stories in each section that relate to what the title of the section is? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so in each of those sections, we talk about various stories as well as bring in scientific research that helps validate that, what you're reading about in the story. So, for example, the very first Mutual Rescue film that we did was called Eric and Petey. And as I mentioned, that went insanely viral. And it's a story about Eric O'Gray. And he weighed 340 pounds, was diagnosed with high cholesterol, high blood pressure, excuse me, and had type 2 diabetes. And his doctor told him he had 5 years to live. And then he ended up adopting a shelter dog named Petey, because his doctor told him to adopt a shelter dog and start walking him every day. And he lost over 140 pounds and completely transformed his life. And he really credits all of that to the fact that he adopted Petey.
Wow. It really must show the power of love that an animal gives and what that power can do for us, how it can make a difference in our lives, really.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I think Eric had never really experienced unconditional love like that in his life before, and he credits Petey with making him a better person and a nicer person, and it really made a huge impact on his life. And it's amazing because we've got stories threaded throughout the book. One of the stories in the chapter that talks about addiction is a film that we just released called Sarah and Domino. And it's about a young woman and the fact that she was dealing with chronic pain that led her to become addicted to drugs. And then she ended up rescuing a neglected dog, and that became the catalyst for change in her own life. She had gone through rehab and found herself really on the precipice of relapsing and realized that she didn't do something different, that she was going to end up returning to drugs. And by adopting a homeless animal, it gave her a purpose and a reason to stay clean. It made her feel like she was needed and that she had a purpose in life. And, you know, she's been clean now for over 6 years. And she really credits that to Domino. And what's interesting about it is that the research, when you look further into addiction, and one of the causes or underlying things that drives addiction is a lack of connection. And that's one of the things that inviting an animal into our life can do, is can help us feel more connected with another sentient being and just become more connected to life and give us a reason and purpose to overcome the things that are presenting, huge challenges in our life.
Well, you're not alone. I mean, that's certainly a big role that the animals play in our lives is giving us comfort and friendship.
Yeah, for sure. And, some of the other films that we have created, I mean, the book has stories in it. Some of them are short films that we've already done, and the stories go deeper than what's in the films. And then we also have a series of new stories that are only available in the book. But one of the stories that we just released a new film on, it's called Kim and Lana. Kim and Brian are the couple, and Lana is the dog that they adopted. And this is in the relationship or the section of the book. And it really was amazing. It's a wonderful young couple, and unfortunately, their first child ended up not surviving. And they both just went into a state of grief, and they found themselves drifting apart from one another because they didn't know how to cope with their grief. And Brian, especially as a man, didn't feel like he had anywhere to go to process that grief. And one of the things he says in the film is that, grief is just love with nowhere to go. But when they ended up adopting Lana, who was a homeless animal, they live in Texas, and they adopted from a shelter there, Lana gave them, and especially Brian, a place to put that love. And it helped bring them back together as a couple and re-cement their relationship. It gave them something to focus on that they could do together and love and care for Lana. And this past Father's Day, they welcomed their son Noah into their family. And so now, Lana really helped them get to the point where they were ready to attempt to have another child, and that has been successful. So a wonderful outcome and a wonderful Father's Day for that whole family. And again, they credit that back to Lana.
My goodness. Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm curious how you find all these stories. Do people come to you, or how do you dig them out?
Yeah, well, so when we first started Mutual Rescue, one of how it all came about was I had been doing a presentation out in our community called Why Helping Animals Helps People, because when I first started in animal welfare, people would sometimes ask me why I was helping animals instead of people. And in order to make that more visceral and more real for people, we decided we wanted to create short films, that just doing a presentation in the community wasn't enough. And so we decided we were going to do a call for stories and invite people to submit their stories. And I had already received Eric O'Dre's story because he sent it into the local shelter that I run in Silicon Valley. And so he had sent that story in, and we had it. So we ended up making this short film of Eric and Petey, and then we invited people watching that film to send in their stories. And we got hundreds and hundreds of stories that came from that, many of which are now included in the book. We've gone on to make other short films based on those stories. And the more people hear about Mutual Rescue and watch the films and read the book, the more stories we receive. And it's amazing because just when I think, oh, I've heard them all, and there can't be another one that moves me to tears, there's another one that comes along. So it's an amazing phenomena. It's happening all across the country, if not the world. Oh. And I'm always deeply touched when people are open and willing to share their experience about how an animal has transformed their life.
So I take it not all the stories come from the Bay Area of San Francisco then?
No, it was a national call for stories. So, these stories are happening in shelters all across the country. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to create Mutual Rescue, is because it isn't just about one shelter. It's really about what is happening all across the country in local shelters and rescue groups everywhere. And we wanted to create films that any shelter or rescue group could use to engage with their community. So, at the end of the films, we do mention where a particular animal was rescued from. But it's not about highlighting any one shelter. It's about highlighting what happens when you bring an animal and a person together.
Well, I mean, it sounded like you have very lofty goals, but it appears you're meeting them without a whole lot of difficulty. I mean, you're finding these stories and you're putting them to film and to and print, and they've done very well for you. I mean, people really enjoy hearing these stories and seeing these stories.
Well, I really think it does resonate for people, and what's exciting about the book, Mutual Rescue, is that it brings in science and academic research, because a lot of people will say, that touches my heart, but, is it really true, or is it really having that big of an impact? So what's great about the book is to be able to highlight the research that correlates it and basically says, what your heart is experiencing, here's the data that can validate that, for your head. So we're not only, telling stories and raising awareness, but we also want to drive engagement at the local level. So another aspect of Mutual Rescue is we have created a toolkit that enables shelters and rescue groups to implement something called Doggy Day Out. Okay. And we've worked with shelters all across the country that have started these programs to pull together best practices. And essentially what it is a program where folks can come to a shelter and take a dog out for the afternoon. So it's a low barrier to participation way for people to get involved with their local shelter, because not everybody's in a position to be able to adopt. Not everybody's in a position to be able to, make a commitment to meet so many hours for volunteering. So if folks are interested in getting engaged and doing a doggy day out at their local shelter, they can go to mutualrescue.org. That website has all of our films, which they can see. It also has a Doggy Day Out tab, and it has a directory that lists all the shelters that have implemented Doggy Day Out programs that they can get involved with. And if we have any shelters or rescue groups that are listening, you can also go to mutualrescue.org and go to the Doggy Day Out tab and download the toolkit, which will make it faster and easier to get a program implemented in your own community.
I see. Do you offer any sort of consultation to people, to organizations, if they feel like they need to speak to someone?
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah, so we have a Facebook administrators group for people that are running Doggy Day Out programs. For anyone that downloads the toolkit and has questions, we have we have a Doggy Day Out program coordinator who is available to assist, and she's held a lot of organizations' hands as they get this up and running or encounter certain problems. And then in the Facebook group for the administrators, it's also a way to share great ideas and see if anyone else has encountered specific situations and get advice from other folks that are doing these programs as well.
How long have you been doing this Doggy Day Out program?
Doggy Day Out has been happening. We started the toolkit, I think, probably about a year ago. And as I mentioned, a few shelters across the country had started these programs earlier, and we worked with them to create this best practices guideline. So I think maybe, I'm not sure who started the first one. I think we've traced it back to somewhere in Virginia probably 3 or 4 years ago. But they're really catching on, and we've got, I think, close to 70 shelters on the directory now and 450 shelters that have downloaded the toolkit. So we're excited to help other organizations get the program up and running.
Have you gotten good feedback from the shelters that have been working with you for a while now, that is working for them? And
yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, one of the shelters that initially implemented the program that we worked with, the best practices for the toolkit, is Fredericksburg SPCA, and they've seen a 20% increase in adoption since they implemented the program, because essentially these animals are getting more exposure. People that have the opportunity to interact with the animals then become advocates to get those animals adopted. And so it really is a great opportunity to help animals get into homes faster.
Oh, sounds great. Well, I presume anyone can procure this book if they would like to, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Mutual Rescue, How Adopting a Homeless Animal Can Save You Too, is available wherever books are sold. So your favorite online retailer, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Indie Books, Audible. It's also available in physical bookstores. It should be at Costco and Target and Barnes & Noble. So just encourage people to pick up a copy, and if they've got a mutual rescue story of their own, we'd love to hear it.
Oh, so you think you'll be adding additional stories? Have a revision of the book coming up or something?
Well, who knows? We'd love to do a second book, and we're always looking for great stories to do new films, and always looking for fabulous content and great stories. So we enjoy hearing from people, and have gotten some new stories that have come into us since people have read the book, which is exciting.
Well, it sounds as if you're doing very well and creating inspiration for pet advocates and pet lovers. And do you have further plans for the future? Any other ways you'd like to expand on this, or?
Yeah, so ultimately what we're hoping to do is secure corporate sponsors so that when people are, buying specific products or services, that a percentage of a product or service would go towards Mutual Rescue, which then would be able to be dispersed out to local shelters that are involved in our Doggy Day Out programs, and other ways that we can help drive more engagement at the local level. So that's kind of our bigger picture plan. We're having conversations right now about a potential documentary, so lots of stuff in the works, and also looking to create more toolkits for programs that help drive human-animal engagement and make it easier for shelters to get those programs up and running. MutualRescue.org.
.org. MutualRescue.org. Yep.